Old Hollywood. An era of glamour, sophistication, and silver screen magic. But behind the velvet curtains and studio lights lurked secrets so dark they were buried for decades. The stars you adored? Some of them were living nightmares for the people closest to them. The studio system didn't just make legends. It protected predators, covered up crimes, and silenced victims. Today we're pulling back that golden curtain to reveal the disturbing truth about 10 beloved icons who were secretly monsters behind the camera. 1. Bing Crosby. America knew him as the gentle crooner, the beloved father from holiday specials, the man whose voice defined Christmas itself. Bing Crosby sold the image of wholesome family values for decades. But according to his own sons, that image was a carefully constructed lie. In their devastating 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, son Gary Crosby described a childhood of systematic physical and psychological abuse. He detailed savage beatings with leather belts, humiliation, and emotional manipulation that left lasting scars on all four of his sons from his first marriage. Lindsay Crosby, another son, corroborated these accounts before his tragic death by suicide in 1989. The contrast between Crosby's public persona and private behavior was staggering. On screen, he was the warm patriarch. At home, according to his children, he was cold, distant, and violently authoritarian. Gary described being beaten until welts covered his back, then being forced to perform cheerfully for guests hours later. Crosby's defenders, including his second family, disputed these accounts. But the pattern of trauma among his first four sons, two of whom died by suicide, paints a troubling picture that Hollywood's publicity machine worked overtime to suppress. The man who sang White Christmas may have given his own children nothing but dark memories. 2. Joan Crawford. She was the ultimate Hollywood survivor, reinventing herself across 4 decades of stardom. But in 1978, 1 year after Joan Crawford's death, her adopted daughter Christina published Mommy Dearest, and the icon's legacy shattered overnight. Christina's memoir depicted Crawford as a narcissistic, alcoholic abuser who subjected her children to bizarre punishments and violent rages. The infamous no-wire hangers scene became cultural shorthand for maternal abuse. Christina described being beaten with hangers, bound to her bed at night, and subjected to psychological torture designed to break her spirit. Crawford's defenders have long questioned Christina's account, noting she was disinherited and may have had financial motives. Her younger twin daughters disputed the abuse claims. But other witnesses, including household staff and family friends, corroborated portions of Christina's story over the years. What's undeniable is that Crawford was obsessed with control and image. She adopted children partly for publicity, staging photo opportunities that presented a perfect maternal facade. Whether the abuse was as extreme as Christina described remains debated, but the pattern of a woman prioritizing her public image over her children's well-being is well documented. Crawford's story raises uncomfortable questions about what the studio system enabled. Stars were brands to be protected, and children were props. Whatever the full truth, Mommy Dearest exposed the darkness that could flourish behind closed doors in Golden Age Hollywood. 3. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was the swashbuckling king of adventure cinema, handsome, charming, and seemingly invincible. Off-screen, his behavior was predatory enough to spawn a criminal trial and a reputation that haunts his legacy to this day. In 1942, Flynn was charged with statutory rape involving 2 teenage girls, Betty Hansen, 17, and Peggy Satterley, 15 at the time of the alleged assault. The trial was a sensation, with Flynn's defense team attacking the girls' reputations rather than meaningfully disputing the encounters. Flynn was acquitted, but the phrase, "in like Flynn," entered the lexicon as a reference to his sexual conquests, a grim linguistic monument to alleged predation. Flynn made no secret of his appetites. In his autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, he bragged about sexual conquests and acknowledged pursuing very young women. He wrote cavalierly about encounters that would be unambiguously criminal by modern standards. His close friendship with Beverly Adland, which began when she was 15 and he was nearly 50, was conducted openly in his final years. Flynn's defenders called him a product of his time, but even by 1950s standards, his behavior raised eyebrows. Warner Brothers protected their investment throughout, managing press coverage and ensuring Flynn remained profitable. His acquittal wasn't justice. It was the studio system functioning as designed, shielding valuable assets from accountability regardless of the damage left in their wake. 4. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was a genuine artistic genius, perhaps the most influential filmmaker of the silent era. He was also a man with a documented, disturbing pattern involving teenage girls that continued throughout his life. Chaplin's first wife, Mildred Harris, was 16 when they began their relationship. He was 29. His second wife, Lita Gray, was just 15 when Chaplin began pursuing her. She appeared in The Gold Rush at 12. They married when she was 16 and pregnant. Their divorce proceedings revealed allegations of abuse and controlling behavior that scandalized even 1920s audiences. Paulette Goddard became his third wife, and while that relationship was between adults, the pattern continued elsewhere. Joan Barry's paternity suit against Chaplin in the 1940s, though he was proven not to be the father through blood tests, revealed another relationship with a much younger woman and resulted in legal troubles that contributed to his eventual exile from America. Chaplin finally married Una O'Neill when he was 54 and she was 18, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill, who never forgave the union. By all accounts, this marriage was genuinely happy and lasted until his death. But the pattern across decades cannot be ignored. Chaplin systematically pursued girls barely past puberty, using his fame and wealth to access them. His artistic contributions were monumental. His personal conduct, by any reasonable standard, was predatory. Hollywood celebrated the former and enabled the latter. 5. Alfred Hitchcock. The master of suspense terrorized audiences with his films. According to multiple actresses, he also terrorized his leading ladies with obsessive, cruel behavior that crossed every professional boundary. Tippi Hedren's allegations are the most extensively documented. The star of The Birds and Marnie has described Hitchcock's behavior as sustained harassment and assault. She alleges he had her followed, made explicit propositions, and when she refused his advances, deliberately sabotaged her career by holding her to a contract while refusing to cast her. In the infamous attic scene in The Birds, Hedren claims she was told mechanical birds would be used. Instead, live birds were thrown at her for 5 days, leaving her physically injured and emotionally traumatized. Hedren isn't alone. Vera Miles reported similar controlling behavior during The Wrong Man and later productions. Joan Fontaine described psychological manipulation during Rebecca. Kim Novak spoke of his possessive direction during Vertigo. A pattern emerges. Hitchcock became obsessed with his blonde leading ladies, attempting to control every aspect of their appearance and behavior. His defenders argue he was simply a perfectionist, but there's a vast difference between demanding excellence and the systematic harassment multiple women independently described. Hitchcock weaponized his genius and industry power to pursue, manipulate, and punish women who wouldn't submit to his desires. His films remain masterpieces. His treatment of the women who made them possible remains a stain that no amount of artistic achievement can erase. 6. John Wayne. John Wayne embodied American masculinity for generations, the strong, silent cowboy who represented rugged individualism and patriotic values. Behind that image was a man whose views and behavior often contradicted the heroism he portrayed. In a notorious 1971 Playboy interview, Wayne made statements about white supremacy and Native Americans that were shocking even then. He defended white colonization, dismissed the humanity of indigenous peoples, and expressed views on race that revealed deep-seated bigotry carefully hidden from his screen persona. His personal life showed similar contradictions. 3 marriages ended in divorce, with allegations of controlling behavior and infidelity throughout. His treatment of women on set was reportedly dismissive and demeaning, though he played romantic leads opposite Hollywood's greatest actresses. Wayne also participated enthusiastically in the Hollywood blacklist, helping destroy careers of suspected communists during the McCarthy era. He served as president of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, an organization dedicated to rooting out supposed subversives. Careers were ruined based on suspicion alone. None of this diminished his stardom during his lifetime. The studio system and American culture protected Wayne's image because he represented something audiences wanted to believe in. But the real John Wayne, the racist, the bully, the blacklist enthusiast, was a far cry from the honorable cowboys he played on screen. 7. Fatty Arbuckle. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was silent cinema's biggest comedy star, literally and figuratively, until a Labor Day party in 1921 destroyed everything and became Hollywood's first major scandal. Actress Virginia Rappe died days after attending a party in Arbuckle's San Francisco hotel suite. Another guest, Maud Delmont, accused Arbuckle of sexually assaulting Rappe, causing injuries that led to her death. The accusation, that Arbuckle's weight had crushed and violated her, became tabloid sensation. Arbuckle faced 3 trials. The first 2 ended in hung juries. The third resulted in acquittal, with the jury taking the extraordinary step of issuing a statement declaring Arbuckle innocent and apologizing for the injustice he'd suffered. Medical evidence suggested Rappe died from a pre-existing condition exacerbated by alcohol, not assault. So why include Arbuckle here? Because the case reveals Hollywood's dark machinery from another angle. Delmont, the primary accuser, was a known fraudster with a criminal record. William Randolph Hearst's newspapers convicted Arbuckle in print long before any trial. The studios first abandoned him, then slowly rehabilitated him when public memory faded. Arbuckle may have been innocent, but the circus surrounding his case established patterns that would define Hollywood scandals for a century. Tabloid exploitation, studio abandonment, followed by quiet rehabilitation, and a system where truth mattered less than publicity. Arbuckle's story isn't about his monstrousness. It's about a monstrous system. 8. Clark Gable. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, possessed a magnetism that made him the era's biggest male star. But one encounter has cast a permanent shadow over his legacy. In 1935, Gable and Loretta Young co-starred in The Call of the Wild, filming in remote Washington state. Young became pregnant. She gave birth to a daughter, Judy, whom she secretly placed in an orphanage before publicly adopting her. For decades, Young maintained a cover story, even denying the truth to Judy herself. What happened between Gable and Young remained disputed until Young's posthumous authorized biography confirmed the pregnancy. But the nature of their encounter remains darker. According to Young's daughter-in-law, Young eventually characterized the encounter as non-consensual, what Young, raised in strict Catholicism, called the worst thing that happened to her. Gable never acknowledged Judy Lewis as his daughter. The physical resemblance was unmistakable, his ears, his features, yet he maintained silence until his death. Young carried the secret and its trauma for her entire life, her faith preventing her from openly discussing what she apparently considered an assault. The studio system ensured silence. Both actors were valuable properties. A scandal would damage profits. So a woman's trauma was buried, a child was denied her father, and the King of Hollywood continued his reign untarnished by accountability. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was a titan of Golden Age cinema, known for powerful performances and eventually for his philanthropic legacy, but allegations surfaced that painted a disturbing picture of the man behind the legend. The most serious allegation involves Natalie Wood. According to accounts from Wood's sister Lana and others, Douglas sexually assaulted the 16-year-old actress during an audition meeting in 1955. Wood allegedly emerged from the meeting traumatized, and according to her sister, this experience contributed to lifelong psychological scars. Douglas never faced legal consequences for this alleged assault. Wood never publicly discussed it during her lifetime, and Douglas denied wrongdoing when questions arose late in his life. The power dynamics of 1950s Hollywood ensured that a teenage actress would have no recourse against one of the industry's biggest stars. Other women came forward with allegations over the years, describing aggressive behavior and unwanted advances. Douglas's memoir acknowledged a reputation as a difficult man, but reframed his intensity as artistic passion. Douglas lived to 103, accumulating honors and humanitarian awards. He was celebrated for breaking the Hollywood blacklist by crediting Dalton Trumbo for Spartacus. But for those who believe the allegations against him, his long life represented decades of escaped accountability, another powerful man protected by a system designed to shield its most valuable assets. 10. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra transformed from skinny crooner to cultural icon, embodying cool sophistication for decades. But behind the smooth vocals and effortless charm lurked a man whose violent temper and troubling associations were Hollywood's worst-kept secrets. Sinatra's connections to organized crime were extensively documented. He cultivated relationships with mob figures throughout his career, from early performances in mob-connected clubs to his infamous associations with Sam Giancana. These weren't casual acquaintances. Federal investigations documented sustained, mutually beneficial relationships with violent criminals. His treatment of women raised serious concerns. Multiple accounts describe physical altercations with girlfriends and wives. Mia Farrow, among others, described controlling and volatile behavior. His affairs were conducted openly and cruelly, humiliating the women in his life. Sinatra's temper was legendary and often directed at those with less power. He attacked journalists, threatened enemies, and cultivated an atmosphere of menace around his inner circle. The Rat Pack's famous swagger had genuine danger behind it. None of this affected his stardom. Studios, record labels, and media outlets needed Sinatra, so they tolerated behavior that would have destroyed lesser talents. His associations with criminals were treated as colorful biography rather than disqualifying corruption. Sinatra's voice remains immortal, but the man behind it regularly chose violence, embraced criminals, and abused his power. The chairman of the board ran a very dark boardroom. Old Hollywood wasn't just a dream factory. It was a machine designed to protect its investments at any cost. These 10 stories represent just a fraction of the darkness the studio system concealed. Victims were silenced. Predators were protected. Image was everything, and truth was negotiable. Understanding this history isn't about canceling the past. It's about acknowledging that glamour often masks exploitation, and that fame has never guaranteed virtue. The Golden Age had a shadow, and we owe it to the victims to finally see it clearly. Thanks for watching.